Hello and welcome to OLA 2022. Thank you so much for joining our session, Voyage into the Unknown, How Not to Redesign a Website, where we're going to talk a little bit more about our experience with the OLA website redesign project. My name is Britt Muirhead, and I'm a programming specialist at the Pioneer Library System, and I started out as a member at large on this redesign committee.
I am Casey Lowry. I am the Digital Services Librarian at East Central University, and I was involved with this project because I was the Marketing and Communications Committee Chair for a few years. I ended up being chair for 3 years, and last year was when that term ended, and this project ended last year. So that's why I am here.
And I'm Charles Brooks. I work at the University of Tulsa as the Electronic Resources Librarian. And my role in all of this is that I am the OLA webmaster. So I ended up being fairly heavily involved in all of this. So much fun.
The man who makes it happen. So for this presentation, we're going to take you through some of the history and background of the OLA website and what led us to the redesign project that we were just recently a part of. And then we're going to give you an overview of the project of redesigning the website to how it looks now, and also cover a few of the challenges that we came across, what we would do differently if we could do it over again. And we're going to mention the sort of the processes of communicating with yourmembership.com, which is the vendor that hosts our website. And then we're also going to talk about the process of getting feedback from DROC groups within OLA, so divisions, roundtables, and committees within OLA, and also doing some usability testing and also accessibility. We learned a lot about that during this project.
So what I'd like to do just briefly is to go through sort of the history of the OLA website. Just give some kind of background from where we started and how we ended up where we eventually ended up. The beginnings of the website is, as best I can recollect, it started in about 1995 when Bob Swisher, who I believe was then the OLA president, put up a homepage for us, I think on an OU server. That was in 95, but by the following year, the position of OLA webmaster had been created. And Andy Peters, who was at Pioneer Library System, was OLA's first webmaster. And in fact, thanks to him, the website was hosted by Pioneer for many years. It changed, as you'll see, over the years. In year 2000, OLA got its first logo. Our first logo was created primarily, as I recall the discussions at the time, as a way of branding the website, that we needed something like that for our website. So we used it a number of times in a number of places. In 2003, I became webmaster, and as you can see, I redesigned the website completely. But most importantly, I saw to it that our hosting was moved from Pioneer to a commercial company called webmasters.com. I was not entirely comfortable. They gave me a login to the Pioneer servers, but I was not entirely comfortable, doing that. I also felt it was time for the OLA website to stand on its own 2 feet, basically. And the executive board, agreed with me on that. And so that let us do things like I was able to create forms for submitting conference programs, awards, and scholarship nominations. The Oklahoma Librarian, our newsletter, went online at that point for members only at that time. In 2005, I added a searchable membership directory, also for members only. In 2007, I stepped down as OLA webmaster, and was succeeded first by Fred Rice from OU and then by Tiffany Benson from also from the University of Tulsa. In 2010, Roy Degler and Nicole Sumpkreither from OSU became our joint webmasters. They then moved the website to a different hosting company called HostGator. And as you can see, they did another site redesign, which I always thought was very pleasant looking, and began things like online registration for workshops and other things like that. In 2012, I began my second go around as webmaster. Apparently, they couldn't get enough of me or something. I don't know.
Everyone loves you, Charles.
I referred to myself as the once and future webmaster, but I took over again right after OLA had made the decision to move the website to Affiniscape, a company called Affiniscape. Now, Affiniscape was an Austin, Texas-based company that specialized in providing web-based management services for nonprofit associations like OLA. So we got a completely redesigned website that you see here. It should look familiar to you. And using an Affiniscape template. This allowed us to do things like move our membership database completely online, allowing each member to set up their own account on the website. We began using AffiniPay to accept and process online payments, which meant that pretty much all OLA services to its members moved online. Dues payment, workshop and conference registrations and payments, donations, all that kind of thing. And then within a few months, by the end of 2012, Affiniscape merged with, or I think more accurately, was swallowed up by another company, a company based in St. Petersburg, Florida, called yourmembership.com, or as I usually just refer to it, YM. And the following year in 2013, they began moving all the Affiniscape clients from the Affiniscape platform, which was going to be shut down, to the YM platform. And in 2014, it was OLA's turn. And in the spring of 2014, OLA moved to the YM platform. It was a big change behind the scenes and the back end of the site, but not so much on the front end, as you can see. YM moved the website into an almost identical template that we had been using with Affiniscape. Probably no one noticed. But by 2018, this version of the website had been around for half a dozen years, and it was showing its age. It really was. Now, I admit I had mixed feelings. It was very easy for me as the webmaster to maintain. Everything was in a default template, easy to create new pages, easy to edit existing pages. I was pretty much satisfied with it. No one else was. It needed a total overhaul, a complete rebuilding. At that time in 2018, the fall of 2018, Stacy Schrank was OLA president, and he asked me to look into what a website redesign would require. So of course I contacted YM, got the necessary information from them. There were a number of options, but given the importance of the website to OLA operations, the executive board decided to go with what they call the brand plus design package, a kind of premium package at a cost of about $10,000. So Stacy then appointed an ad hoc redesign committee, and we got to work. It sounded like it was going to be a piece of cake. They even gave us a nice guide to follow. I figured, this is going to be smooth sailing. We're not going to break a sweat on this. We're going to go from this to this in no time at all. Am I right about that, Britt?
Right, indeed. Yeah, let's see what this process actually entailed in this 2.5 year span. So overall, this process took about 2.5 years to complete and was filled with way more unknowns than I could have ever imagined coming into this committee as a member at large. So let's go ahead and dive in a little bit more to this entire voyage. So this redesign process began in the fall of 2018, as Charles mentioned, where internal decisions were made in OLA to move forward with a full website redesign. It was at this time that it was decided that YM would be the vendor that we would be working with. By the spring of 2019, a committee of OLA members and members at large were pulled together to tackle this project. And we came together for our first meeting in April of that year. Our first task involved filling out the initial design guide packet that Charles featured just a little bit earlier that was provided by YM. This design guide gave us the opportunity to determine what overall design features we wanted to incorporate into the new site, including what colors we wanted to use, types and sizes of fonts, header and footer content, navigation menu options, and what content we wanted featured on our homepage. So throughout the spring, the committee met a few times to discuss how to approach these aspects of the website. And we worked together to gather all of the specific information that we needed for the design features, including color codes, images, logos, all of that fun stuff. By May of that year, we completed and submitted the design guide. So to give a little bit more context into the process before moving on, for each design guide submission, YM allowed for up to 3 rounds of revisions. So what this means is that we had 3 opportunities to submit feedback and review requested changes before our decisions were essentially locked in without further expense. So with this in mind, throughout the fall of 2019, the committee met again multiple times to review the mock-ups of the homepage that YM had developed from our design guide submission. We compiled feedback on the changes that we wanted to see and submitted revision lists to our representative, and we did that up to 3 times. So then came 2020, and we all know what happened then. March of that year brought the greatest unknown that we had yet to know. And by the end of that month, the sitting chair of the committee reached out to Casey and I to see if we would be interested in taking over this project to help see it through to the end, since she had plenty of other responsibilities on her plate. So Casey and I jumped at this opportunity and, of course, quickly looped in Charles, our awesome webmaster, who we couldn't have done this without, to create this small team within the committee to help us work a little bit more efficiently to get through the nitty-gritty work and more effectively communicate with YM. Throughout the spring of 2020, we met frequently to discuss subpage templates and determine which 10 of YM's options were the best for our site's needs. We then took those suggestions to the larger committee for discussion and review and submitted the subpage design guide by the end of that spring. So sorting through the subpage template options in our smaller team really helped the larger committee's conversation be a bit more productive and allow us to spend more time digging into the templates that we knew we wanted to move forward with. So just a little note on the perk of our small team. As we waited for the subpage mockups to be designed and survived through the stress that was the first summer of the pandemic, Casey worked diligently to develop a sitemap of the old site to ensure that every single page and its contents were accounted for throughout the transition process. It also really helped with matching our pages to the subpage templates further down the line. So we started out the fall of 2020 strong with a series of reviews of the subpage mockups that we received from YM alongside the 3 revision requests that we sent back to them. We also started reaching out in this time to the chairs of OLA's divisions, roundtables, and committees to get their feedback on the content that they wanted featured on their associated pages. In doing so, we hosted virtual meetings to answer questions and take verbal feedback, along with creating a shared document for the chairs to upload their content directly. As we neared the end of 2020, there were quite a few rocky waves on our journey. One of them included learning that some of our templates were not very accessible, and subsequently learning that our vendor does not inherently build accessibility into their site. So with this new information, our smaller team decided to do a little bit of a backtrack on some of our subpage template choices. And we consulted with AbleTech to get some feedback to determine how to move forward with a more accessible site design. This process included meeting with YM multiple times and keeping a very open line of communication about our site needs with them. We also ended up having to do a little bit of the research on our own, which I think Charles is going to speak a little bit more about here soon, just to incorporate some of that accessibility into our site. So by the beginning of 2021, we gathered a group of volunteers to test the usability of our site and review site design and consistency. In our testing, we accounted for major operating systems and browsers and asked our testers to indicate what they used for their testing and to share feedback on every page that they visited. So this is something that the testing and usability forms is something that we're sharing later in this presentation, and you'll have access to after if you need it for reference for any reason. When we received all of this feedback back, we compiled everything together and created lots of separate lists for Charles to work through to make smaller changes throughout the site, and a list of more of the major changes that we wanted to pass along to YM that had to do more with like this overall site design and issues that they could take care of on their side. So by April of 2021, the site was launched and revealed at the OLA membership meeting. And Casey will get a little bit more into this soon. But even though the site is live and has been launched, there's still accessibility considerations that we're working through and that are being addressed. And maintaining a site is just a constant ongoing process. So that 2.5-year journey offered a lot of learning opportunities along the way. There were many unknowns that presented themselves as challenges. So first of all, our committee was very large and made up of a group of 9 people from the beginning. And in addition to it being a large committee, all the members were participating as volunteers. So not only was it complicated to find meeting times that worked for everyone, along with having productive conversations over the many, many details that come along with the website redesign project, we also had other priorities and responsibilities that made it challenging to really dedicate our time to this project. Another major challenge that revealed itself was the lack of a project timeline from the beginning of the process. This made it really easy to put off meeting times and decision-making without having a solid finish line in place. Another hurdle that we discovered along this journey was the fact that we didn't have any idea of the limitations of the vendor that we were working with, such as not designing with accessibility in mind. And of course, COVID became the big unknown challenge that invited itself into all of our lives the past few years, meaning that everything had to pivot into a virtual realm. So all of the brunt of this project had to be completed solely through remote communications and virtual calls, tons of emails, and so many Zoom meetings.
And lots of Google Docs.
Lots of docs.
So many Google Docs.
Yes. And knowing all we know now, maybe we can help y'all have a little bit easier process in your redesign journey.
Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about what we would choose to do differently if we could go back in time, or if we had to do another redesign, how would we do it differently? That's a long list. So first of all, we would involve Oklahoma AbleTech a lot earlier. And they actually, in part of their consulting services that they provide, they can help you look at contracts with vendors and kind of try to help you advocate for yourself and advocate for building accessibility into a contract. And I really wish we had done that, because we might have been able to work something out with YM to try to get that sort of going from the very beginning of the process, and would have saved us a lot of backtracking, and also just it's best to design for that kind of thing from the beginning, so you don't have to try to fix things that you find later. Also, we would be more intentional about the makeup of our committee. So we had 9 people. We had the past, current, and next year's president were part of the makeup of our committee. And then we had me as the marketing and communications chair, Charles as the webmaster, a couple of committee members at large, just like members of OLA who could provide feedback. I think also the membership engagement committee chair was one of our people. And those are, I think, those are decent choices of like who should be on a committee, but we were missing some things like an accessibility expert. None of us were that. We should have gone out of our way a little bit more, I think, to include that on our committee. Also, making sure that the people we asked to be on this committee really could devote their time and attention to it. I think that's one of the reasons why it took us so long, was just because, like the others have mentioned, this was a fully volunteer operation. We all have, day jobs that we have to do things for, and it can be really hard to devote time to a project like this. So trying to gather a group that can really get things done in a quicker time frame can be helpful, because if you spread out the process too long, then it's like, I think some of the meetings that we had, we were like trying to remember what we talked about at our last meeting because it was so long ago. So trying to get, getting the ball rolling and keeping it rolling is important for this kind of project. And also, like Britt said, partway through our project, we sort of created a smaller team that could work a little bit more closely together and directly communicate with YM. And then we would bring stuff that we worked on to the larger committee. And I think if we had started off that way, I think that would have helped our process be a little bit more smooth. And then also, we just had so many emails, all the emails. I can't tell you how much time I spent like trying to dig through my email, trying to find something that was talked about. And it would have probably been a lot easier to find that stuff if we had used Slack or Teams or Discord or some kind of platform where you can have like multiple channels, everything's all in one place, you can do a search, and it's all one project for this, like one Slack channel for this project, instead of trying to dig through your email, which has lots of other stuff. So there's a few things. Also, we ended up doing a full accessibility audit with Oklahoma Able Tech after we went live with the new site. And we should have done that before we went live. We did do a lot of accessibility work on our own before we did the audit, but the audit still, when you do a full audit, it's going to uncover a lot of stuff that you miss. And, Oklahoma Able Tech and other places that are really like have accessibility as a focus, they can catch things that you can't catch on your own. And they have tools that they can use to like dig through the website for accessibility flags. So doing that kind of thing before you go live makes it easier to communicate with Charles mentioned this, that there were some things that we wanted to do to change a couple of templates, but we waited too long and then we were going to get charged extra. So if we had done that earlier, we might have been able to avoid that. It would have been good for us to do more face-to-face meetings for feedback, getting feedback from Drox, as well as just the people that we had testing our website for usability. A lot of that communication was like me sending emails and then them sending an email back and just like including what they want to change. And sometimes that kind of communication is just better if you can have a real-time back and forth to answer clarifying questions. A lot of the people that we were seeking feedback from are not web design experts, so they don't always know what the technical challenges or capabilities are. And so having it be a real-time conversation can really smooth out a lot of that kind of communication. And then I would also just say, we did have multiple cycles of usability testing, but I would have liked to have seen us do more. We were toward the end of our project, we really had this deadline, like we wanted to get this done by the OLA membership meeting, and we really condensed a lot of our usability testing down to a few months. And we really should have, I think ideally we would want to spend at least a year doing that so we can have a chance to do some more iterative changes. Because we are actually, now that we are live, we're still doing some work on improving some of the stuff we didn't have time to do. And if we had done a little bit more of that before going live, and before we finished our process with YM, we could, get their help on doing some of that stuff, so it wouldn't just be all on us. And then also just getting a little bit more diversity in our user testing groups. Getting, like, for us, that would mean like different kinds of members who come from different libraries, different library types. For a library who has a website, that might mean different kinds of users, like children, adults, people from a variety of socioeconomic backgrounds, different variety of technical skill levels. You want to try to get as many different viewpoints as you can when you're testing, so that you can make sure you're accommodating the needs of all those groups. So just include as many different people as you can. We did make an effort to do that, but we were also on a pretty tight timeline, so we could have done better on that, I think. And now Charles is going to talk to you a little bit about how he communicated with our vendor.
Yes, I did want to talk about communicating with the good folks at YM. I was sort of the primary contact person between your membership and the redesign committee, and dealing with them anyway is just part of my turf as the OLA webmaster, and mostly I do that via email, and this was no exception. I first contacted your membership about doing a redesign on August the 17th, 2018, the afternoon after the executive board gave me the go-ahead to start working on this. And that was the beginning of a very lengthy email exchange. They immediately assigned us a project manager. Unfortunately, in April of 2019, he left your membership for another company, and we were assigned a new person to work with. This was a guy named Chad, and he remained our contact for the rest of the project. I still have these long email chains documenting my correspondence with him and with other folks at YM, and Casey got into some of these, and sometimes it's providing the information they need about what we want on the website, for example, like when they were developing the mock-ups for our templates, just all kinds of different things. Other times it's trying just to find out what's going on. In this particular email in February of 2020, they were supposed to have had our new design up several days previously, and all I was hearing from them was the sound of crickets. So I sent a quick email to Chad. He got back to me very quickly, and it turned out that everything was ready to go. They just hadn't let me know about it. They're busy too, of course. So sometimes you do have to be prepared, to poke them with a stick occasionally. That's just part of it. So yeah, email was my primary means of communicating with your membership.com throughout the process, and obviously it's a critical tool that you're going to be using to keep track of things. No surprise there. But it's really not a substitute for actually talking person to person with somebody. It's just not going to be the same. There were many times when my emails with Chad, I'm kind of unclear as to what he's telling me. I'm having a problem with a template, getting it to work right, or with getting a style to work properly. Something's just not behaving like I want it to. So I met several times with him face to face. And what you see here on the screen is just where we're trying to set up a time for meeting. They used GoToMeeting, I believe, rather than Zoom. But it was always very helpful when I was able to do this with Chad, because he was able to sort of take me by the hand, show me online, demonstrate things that we had been discussing in the emails, deal right there with problems I was having. And the redesign committee also met with him online 2 or 3 times. And I think this was especially helpful as we got closer and closer to our go live date. And mentioning our go live date, the go live date is the date that you pick basically to switch websites, to turn off your old website and turn on your new one. Okay. So they sent us this document that you see on the screen very early on in the process that was supposed to go step by step through exactly what going live would entail for us. But as we got closer and closer to that date, we ended up having a lot of concerns about the specifics, about exactly what we needed to do, when we needed to do it, what to expect, what files would be moved over, what files would not be moved over. So we really needed to pin Chad down on these things, and it really helped doing that, doing an online meeting with him. Much easier, much more effective than through email. Sometimes Chad's emails could be a little terse and difficult to follow. In person, though, he was quite personable. Seemed like a very nice guy. And so like I said, we could pin him down when we're talking to him face to face. And it turned out that, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say it gave him a chance to ask us for clarification too, because we would send him like this list of things that we wanted altered, and sometimes it didn't really make sense because we weren't like using the right terminology for what things were called, and so he might need to ask for clarification on that stuff.
And the funny thing was, though, almost nothing in this Go Live document turned out to be correct. The whole process worked nothing like what they tell us in this document. It turned out to be much easier. In fact, they did almost everything for us in terms of moving things from the old site to the new site. So having those in-person meetings, for me at least, helped to alleviate some of my confusion and stress. The only real issue, and this is one that both Casey and Britt have alluded to, that I really got a little frustrated with them on, was the issue of accessibility. And I'm still kind of, I wouldn't say stunned, but I'm pretty surprised that neither Chad nor the entire YM design team even seemed to recognize, have any awareness that it was even a thing. Let me give you a quick example of that, and go to the OLA website. And one of the suggestions that we had was to add what's called a skip navigation link to each page on the website. You notice up here we have all of these different navigation links. The problem is, if you're using a screen reader, or even if you're keyboard only for some reason, you have to go through each of these links on each and every page of our website each and every time you bring it up. That's very time consuming and frustrating. What you want is a link that will take you down to the main content of the page, called a skip navigation link. It's invisible unless you're using a screen reader, or you press the tab key and then it pops right up. Selecting that link takes you straight into the main content of the page. You can see how that would be very useful if you're using a screen reader or something. When I brought it up to the good folks at YM, they had no clue. So what we had to do was we had to go out and do some Googling on our own, find some information about it, and get it to them ourselves. We had to do that ourselves. But to their credit, once they understood what we wanted, they did get it implemented for us. So, credit where it's due there. But one more thing I would mention, and I think Casey already alluded to this. If you want changes made, whether it's for accessibility purposes or anything else, be sure you get them in as soon as you possibly can. We had 3 revision rounds for our website. They would make major changes to our design 3 times. And unfortunately, after the 3rd time, we discovered that we needed to have what's called an expand all link. Again, this is for accessibility purposes on some of our pages that were using a particular JavaScript. And when I brought it up to them at YM, unfortunately, this was after our 3rd revision. And so they were going to charge us $125 an hour to make that change. Get your changes in. Get your changes in early. Always be sure you know exactly where you are in the process. Don't lose track of what's going on. So anyway, by this point, we're getting close to the go live date, and we have everything set up, pretty much like we're satisfied with it. But the question becomes, is everybody else going to be satisfied with it? How do we determine that, Casey?
So that is a very complicated answer. My answer to that question is very long. So I will start in on that. Starting out with this meme I'd like to share. The top shows how design is made, lots of windows open, lots of things going on. And then how clients think design is made. Oh, I just click a button and it happens. This isn't true of everyone that we worked with, but I mean, I did a lot of communicating with a lot of folks, and they would suggest for us to make a change, and they didn't fully understand what they were asking. They thought, oh, you can just move this over here, right? No, not necessarily. Especially with some of the templates we were working with, it was pretty, where things were laid out on a page really couldn't be changed. What was on each, what was in each spot on the page could be changed, but the arrangement maybe not so much. And none of us are web designers by trade. I mean, none of us are getting paid to do this. Charles has a lot of experience with web stuff, but he doesn't get paid to come up with original coding for a website. So it's just we had some limitations on this. I did a lot of emails primarily, and I created a lot of Google Docs, and that's primarily how I got the Drock chairs to send me the content that they wanted changed. So I'm just going to show you an example. So the EDII roundtable, I sent them this document and asked them to adjust the wording if they wanted something changed. And they also have, I just basically sent them all of the content that was relevant for their group and asked them to look over it and make sure that it said what they wanted to say, update things that needed to be updated if it had outdated information. And you can see like there were maybe some spots that would be a link to some document or something. So this is the content that then I would send to Charles so that he could make updates to our website. And this process worked really well for some people, but not everyone. And that's why I mentioned earlier that I really wish that I had done some more face-to-face meetings at this point in the process, because I think it would have helped people have a chance to see what the capabilities are. And if someone had a suggestion that we wouldn't be able to fulfill, then I could have a chance to like maybe explain to them a little bit why and what the limitations are, so that then they could maybe come back to me again later with different suggestions within the confines of what we can do. But like, see, this is, there was at least one document for every group. We have a lot of groups in OLA. So there were a lot of people to get feedback from. And some groups in particular, I even created a little folder for them. Like, for example, the Sequoia Committee, they have a lot of content on our website that's really important. And so I created multiple documents to get feedback from them. And I'll just say, sometimes I felt like Liam Neeson in Taken. I will find you and chase you for feedback. Like, some people were very difficult to get a hold of, and it took a while. And that's another reason why I think face-to-face meetings might have been helpful, because if I could get everybody that I needed to talk to commit to at least one meeting, then I could have a chance to talk to them. But sometimes, you know, an email might get lost in the shuffle. So yeah, but I want to show you also a couple of examples of what the old website looked like compared to the new website, just so you can kind of see what difference it made getting feedback from people. So OLA endowment, for example, the old website, really this page that you're looking at was the only thing they had. It was the donation page, and it had a couple of links for people to donate, but it didn't really have that much information about the endowment. So I, sent them a Google Doc and asked them if they could give us some information. And this is their new page. It has so much more information, has some really nice photos on it. So if someone new to OLA doesn't really understand what the endowment is for and what it does, this page can help them see what that group does. So that was one of the things that I was really shooting for when I was trying to get feedback from these groups. Another group that had a pretty drastic change was the Sequoia Awards Committee. So their pages on our website are some of our highest traffic pages because of the Sequoia Book Awards are, a big deal. And we want to make sure that their pages are easy to navigate and that people can find what they're looking for. So in the past, like, really all of their information was kind of just on one page, and it was just like you had to scroll down to get, you had to scroll down to get to all of the content. And then they had like these long lists of links to materials. But on the new website, we have a little bit of information about the award up at the top, and then you don't have to scroll down too much, and then you have links to all the different pages that people might need. And so we basically broke the content up, and how we decided to break it up was a joint decision. It wasn't just the website redesign committee making a decision for the Sequoia committee. We really wanted them to have a say in what their content looked like and how it was organized. And that's important. You want to involve the users of your site in the design of the site, because they're the ones who are going to be using it. And that's why feedback and testing is so important. So the next step of the process after getting all of the content information from the docs was to do some testing and make sure everything is working correctly, making sure that it's proofread, the links go to the places that they're supposed to. And one thing that we discovered partway through this process was the importance of mobile responsiveness. We weren't really even thinking about that when we first started, but I think it was at one of our meetings, Kathy looked at the website on her phone and she realized, oh, this does not look good on a phone. Like the pictures were cut off or the text was too small or something. So then we started doing a round of revisions to make sure that each one of our pages was also not, in addition to it looking good on a desktop browser, that it would also look good on a mobile device, a phone or a tablet or something like that. And we created this checklist and we gathered a group together. We had all these different browsers we wanted to test, also all these different kinds of devices. And then we had this checklist that we put together. Well, Britt put this together for us, and she found some similar checklists online that were much more extensive, but we wanted to kind of pare it down to what was most relevant for our website. And we had a pretty good team of people working on this. But like I've been saying a few times, I wish we had just done more, spent a little bit more time on this, had a few more rounds of testing for this, because really it's like we're still discovering things that we want to, update and improve. And we don't really have that built-in ad hoc committee anymore. So and we also don't have our vendor working directly with us on this anymore. So it would have been easier for us to make all the changes we wanted to make if we'd done it before going live. And that brings me back to accessibility. I want to say again, if you have a chance to do a full audit, do it before you go live so that you have a chance to make changes before. And you can, if you don't have, if you're not able to do a full audit, like with a professional organization like AbleTech, you can do some testing on your own. There are tools out there on the internet that can help you test color contrast and heading levels, making sure all your images have alt text, making sure your hyperlinks are descriptive instead of just saying click here, because that's just not really best practice. And making sure that you have some people on your team who can test the website out with screen readers. And another thing that we discovered is that carousels on a website, like rotating images, those are not accessible. And we originally had one on our homepage. And this link is just a little link that kind of takes you through some reasons why you shouldn't use one. And we ended up getting rid of ours. So we still have a nice big image on our homepage, but it's no longer a rotating image, it's just static, because rotating images are not accessible and accessibility is important to us. And so we did do another round of feedback after our usability testing, and I sent another checklist. This is an altered version of the other one. It's a little bit shorter, and it gives some space for the Drocs to give some last minute feedback on the content. And this was also sent out to more people than I did in the first round of Droc feedback. So the first round I did, I really just was focusing on contacting the chairs of each group. And then this time I sent it to the chairs and the incoming chairs. And if there was a group that had any other elected leaders, like a treasurer or a secretary, I would send it to all those people. And I also encouraged the Droc leaders to, give this checklist to anyone in their group that might want to help. And so we really did send this out to as many people as we could. But again, I would like to have had more live face-to-face meetings. I did have two. I held 2 face-to-face meetings and invited all of the Droc leaders to come, but I really wish I had done more than 2. It just wasn't enough. It's just never enough. As much time as you can devote to doing testing, you really want to focus on that. And it is important, though, when you're getting feedback from people, to just know that not everybody knows what the limitations are, and it can be difficult to explain visual concepts with just text kind of like what Charles was saying, when he would send emails back and forth with YM, sometimes it wasn't completely clear what someone was saying. So having a face-to-face meeting really helps solve that issue. And asking people to be specific in their feedback is also really important. If someone just tells you there's something off about this page, this looks weird, can you change it? Well, that's not really helpful. I mean, weird how? What's your suggestion for fixing it? And so that's another challenge with getting feedback. And the bottom line is you can't please everybody. Some people aren't going to like what you come up with no matter what. And some people are going to like certain things and not other things. So, just be kind to yourself. If you do a project like this, don't beat yourself up if someone tells you they don't like it, because not everyone is going to like it, and that's okay. But if you devote as much time as you can to doing lots of rounds of testing and feedback, and you do your due diligence, then you can say, we got user feedback on this, and we've done our best to get input from everybody who might be using this website. So Dwight Schrute tells us, website is done. False. Website is never done. Like I said before, we're still working on it. And even if we had solved all the problems and it's completely accessible, 100%, still it would be updated. I mean, websites are living things. They're updated constantly. OLA has activities every month, and every year the leaders of our organization change. And so information on the website gets updated all the time. So even though we went through this very long redesign process, we aren't finished, and really we never will be finished. So another aspect of this project is trying to make sure that you set things up so that you can update them in the future, and setting things up so that things can be sustained. Right, like for example, we have a marketing communications committee in OLA, and after this project was over, that committee decided to create a standing, like a permanent subcommittee called the OLA Website Committee. And so that group can kind of do the continuous work of updating the website and fixing issues that come up, or updating content that needs to be updated. So that's the kind of thing, like this kind of project, it doesn't just stop after you've gone live. Sustainability is an important aspect to keep in mind. And here are a few resources that we used when we were doing this project and you might find useful. WebAIM in particular has some really useful tools that you can use to test a website. And I believe actually WebAIM is where we got information about the skip to main content button, and that's what we sent to YM so that they could incorporate that on our pages. And we've included our checklists, our usability checklists that we created in a folder in Google Docs. And so you can use this link to get to those if you want to take a look at those. And you can feel free to contact us if you have questions about what we've talked about, or you want to know a little bit more about what the OLA website has to offer, or if you want to know a little bit more about web accessibility. I feel like I've learned so much about accessibility over the last couple of years. I don't know that I would consider myself an expert necessarily, but this project has taught me a lot about that. So I know for myself, you can email me anytime. Charles and Britt, we're all here to be resources to you if you end up needing to do any kind of redesign of your own website, even if it's not a full redesign, if you're just wanting to make some improvements. This presentation is called How Not to Redesign a Website, because we know what not to do now. We can kind of help you do what would be easiest and best, and not just kind of be crawling through the dark, figuring it out as you go. So that's why we're here. We're here to be a resource for you.
Definitely. Yeah. So thank you all so much for joining us at OLA 2022 this year. Please remember to complete a virtual session evaluation on the OLA conference website, and we hope you'll join us for many more conference sessions. Thank you.